So by now we know that there's a whole bunch of health benefits related to cold plunging, whether it's having a cold shower every day or going into a cold plunge. This video is not about that, but instead it's what I think of as the next layers of how and why going into the cold water every day can be such a valuable part of your toolkit for peak performance, optimal recovery, building resilience, rewiring our brain, developing a new relationship with our nervous system, and ultimately being the healthiest, most fulfilled, most present version of ourselves. There's three topics that I want to talk about, and I've got my notes here because this is actually really important. We're going to talk about three things. The first one is microdosing discomfort. What is this? What does it mean, and why is it important? The second one is how does the cold work as an active meditation, right? What does it do to our attention, and why is that so important? And finally, the third thing is we're going to talk about the opportunity that we have to build a relationship with our nervous system, and what does that even mean, and how does that happen through the cold? So these three things are really what I would think of as the next level of unlocks as it relates to this daily practice, this intentional practice of using the cold water as a vehicle for us to deepen the journey within and really set ourselves up, equip ourselves with the tools and the connection between our brain, our neurophysiology, our brain and body to go out and be at our very best. So let's talk about the very first one, microdosing discomfort. Really, the concept here is that for us to be our healthiest, we have to do things that challenge each part of our system, our brain, our heart, our physical body, and our nervous system every single day. We've got to introduce a little bit of discomfort, right? We can't stay comfortable. We can't stay in the comfort zone. And so this concept of every day, how do I microdose discomfort? How do I take on little bits of positive stress that in the moment are going to be really hard? My brain's going to try and trick me back into the comfort zone. But instead, I'm going to take that leap off the high dive. I'm going to get into, in this example, the cold water, and I'm going to stay there, really connected. And that little bit of discomfort, that little bit of challenge actually helps us build resilience. The other thing that it does is when we take on positive stressors in our lives where we're moving with intention into something that's going to challenge us, something that's going to potentially expand us, but it's going to take a little bit of work, our body actually rewards us with this neurotransmitter called dopamine. And so dopamine is the thing that makes us feel energized, motivated. It's what gives us that intrinsic excitement or energy and capacity. And so when we go in the cold water, as we come out after 1 to 2 minutes, right, 60 to 90 seconds, our body actually starts to deliver this dopamine into our body and our brain. And it makes us feel great. And that dopamine stays in our system. We feel energized and motivated for up to 4 hours after going in the cold. So not only are we building resilience, right? We're building new neural pathways by taking this little dose of discomfort that we know is going to make us better down the road. It's going to also contribute to our longevity, us being able to stay healthier longer. But we're also getting this immediate benefit of all of this great feeling dopamine that is kind of like an internal shot of caffeine, right? But it sticks around and it's healthy, it's good for us, and it's being released within us. We have everything we need inside. So first one is microdosing discomfort. The second one is attention, or what I've written down here is this active meditation. When you make that choice to turn on a cold shower or to go into a cold plunge, you almost have no choice after that but to be present because your body is going through this whole mobilization, right? We're going to talk about the nervous system in a second, but part of what it does is it just forces you to be here. Okay, whoa, there's a lot going on in my body. I've got to come back and really focus on my breath. And what's happening underneath this is that your attention is being brought back to the present moment. Think about how often in our lives we live up here in our brains and our attention is drifting off into these places that maybe don't serve us the best. Maybe we're thinking about the future and getting worried or having some anxiety. Maybe we're thinking about the past and having regrets or doubts or a little bit of that depression, that disappointment. Or maybe we're just letting our minds go to different things that trigger us from a negative perspective. Where your attention goes, your whole system follows. And so by going into the cold water, in some ways what we're doing is we're reminding our brain and we're reminding our nervous system to come back to this present moment and to use the breath and the focus on the breath as a vehicle to do that. So we have this opportunity to train our attention back into the present, back to being right here. And it turns out that that benefits us everywhere else in life. Our attention is like a muscle. So I think about attention as like we have all these little units of attention in our brain, and where those units go, our whole system is going to follow that for good and oftentimes for bad, right? For suboptimal states. And so we're training this muscle, this fortress of attention when we go into the cold water so that we get to choose where do we put that attention in the future. But there's a second part of this attention management, right? This active meditation with your attention that's really valuable, which is when our attention lands in the present moment, we have the opportunity to be intentional about what we do. Meaning, what I often do when I'm using cold water in the morning or in the evening is I'm setting an intention to move, to use the cold to move and transition either into my days. So I'm using that breath and I'm really thinking about and embodying how do I want to show up today, right? We can actually breathe that in and shift our neurophysiological state to prepare for how we want to move into the day. That's setting an intention. And there's some days where at the end of the day, I need to like get all the stuff off of me. Maybe I had a really negative day up here or an emotional day with ups and downs, or maybe I just feel lethargic, or I feel like I have too much energy and I'm not going to be able to calm down. And guess what? In the evening, when I go into that cold shower or that cold plunge, I'm inviting the water and that active meditation, that mobilization and connection with my breath, I'm inviting that to let me cleanse. Both the water is cleansing, but also my breath can then become cleansing. And we aren't able to do that until we bring all of our attention into this present moment. So the cold water acts as this active meditation, a vehicle for us to bring all of our attention right here. That's the second one, active meditation, bringing our attention into the present moment. The third topic is building a supple and flexible relationship with our nervous system. So what does that actually mean, right? Our nervous system is going between these states of protection and defense and sometimes shut down and collapse. I'm making this position because sometimes it feels like we just want to curl up into a ball. And then sometimes we find those perfectly flowy states of peak performance where we're playing, we're flowing, we're performing. Maybe we're just connecting in really meaningful ways with the environment around us or with the people that we love and care about. And our nervous system is listening to all of that. And ultimately, for us to be able to perform at our very best, we need to be able to remind and stay connected to our nervous system with a whole bunch of safety. So we call this our container or our window of safety, connection, and belonging. In order for you to perform at your very best, not just right now, but over a long period of time and over the course of life, you need to give your nervous system cues of safety, connection, and belonging over and over and over again. This is a practice that we do dozens, if not hundreds of times per day. When your nervous system feels like, oh, I don't have any more safety, there's lots of threat, maybe in the external world, maybe up here, the stories we tell ourselves, maybe I'm losing safety in my relationships, we immediately lock into suboptimal states, whether that's protection and defense, or whether it's collapse, right, disassociation. When we go into the cold water, we bring all of our attention into this moment. We're intentional about how we're moving in and out of that experience. And then we feel our breath and we connect to our breath. We have all of the ingredients to start expanding our window of safety, connection, and belonging that we get to take with us everywhere in life. So what I mean by that is when you go into the cold, your body will naturally mobilize into what's called a fight or flight or a sympathetic nervous system state. You may look like this, your breath may be up in your chest, and when you go into the cold water intentionally, this is okay. We actually want to invite this feeling. We want to feel all that energy moving and mobilizing, and then we need to come back to our breath. So there's a point where we go from to finding a breath where we go, and then maybe we breathe in through our nose and down into our belly, and we let it out with a big surrendering sigh. And what we're doing in that moment is we're building a connected relationship with our nervous system. We're actually sending a signal back to our brainstem, telling our brainstem and our nervous system that no matter what's going on in the world, think about the water representing challenge and adversity and things that blindside us in life and those things that make us go into shock or anxiety or panic or depression. And what we're saying is that no matter what's going on, I'm here. I'm connected. That breath is a reminder to our nervous system that we are safe. And so as we go into the cold water, we're expanding our window, our tolerance, right? We're keeping safety and connection and belonging on board as life gets more and more challenging. And the more that we do that in the environment of cold water, the more that we bring that expanded container and all of those tools of safety, connection, and belonging out into life where we really need them, where we need to show up, perform, and be at our very best in the moment. So microdosing discomfort, active meditation, bringing your attention into the present moment, and building that flexible, adaptable relationship with your nervous system using the breath. Every time you go into the cold water, you have the availability to practice and nourish and connect with all of those tools. And the last thing that I want to share is, okay, how do you take this back into your life? And so what I would recommend, really simple tips. Doing this every day is way more beneficial than doing like a 5-minute or a long cold exposure once a week. So small, consistent, daily practice. You can do this in the morning, in the evening, or both. It doesn't matter whether you do a cold shower or a cold plunge. You're going to get the same benefits if you move with these 3 intentional tools into the practice. The water doesn't need to be super cold. It just needs to be cold enough to make you go like, huh, like that. We all know what that feels like. That means it's uncomfortable enough to get that microdose of discomfort, to bring your attention here and to activate your breath and your nervous system. And then time-wise, I really think about 60 to 90 seconds, but really the guide for you is going to be your breath and your state. So the cold, you are really going on a journey within. And so you need to pay attention to, where am I at? Do I need 1 or 2 more breaths? Or am I here? Am I perfect? Have I got it all? Did I check those 3 boxes? As with anything that allows us to change our trajectory by 1% and literally put us on a totally different path in life, you've got to practice this every day. And so my encouragement would be, try this for 30 days, bring those 3 tools into every cold exposure, keep a little journal in the evening, because the journal is where you are actually going to be able to recognize and appreciate what you're learning, how you're growing. Without that, you're going to blow right by all these little micro changes that end up being the seeds that change that trajectory. And then come back and let me know how it's going. Let me know when you're a week in, let me know when you're halfway, and let me know when you get to 30 days. And I want to know what's moving, what's changing, what do you notice?